My name is Erin, and Blue, it's okay. I'm just talking to the camera. That's my dog Blue, and again, I'm Erin. Um, I wanted to originally start this channel to document my journey. Um, I was calling it like 9 to 5 to freedom. I wanted to be a more sustainable person. I wanted to live more simply. I think a lot of people are going through this these days, and I guess I kind of realized it about 4 years ago. Um, I was very unhealthy. I was suffering with my health. I weighed about 150 pounds more than I do now. Um, and I found out I had type 2 diabetes, and I work for a dialysis provider. And I realized that if I continued down the road that I was going, um, I would end up in that chair. And so there was a little more to it than that. And I'll discuss weight loss perhaps in a series of videos if you guys express interest in that. So I'll discuss rather the personal catharsis that also went along with that. But during that time, I was also really evaluating my life. I started to realize that while I was single and fairly successful, making a good amount of money for a single woman. I had purchased a home, I had a decent vehicle, but also with that, I still had student loans and credit card debt and all kinds of things like that that sort of go along with American life these days. And I started hearing lots of people moving to this tiny home or sustainable living sort of venture. And it interested me because um, in my life, I had just sort of been doing what I needed to do to survive. I had not focused on myself. I had not focused on what I actually wanted or needed out of life. I was just focusing on going to work, doing the best job I could for everyone there, the patients and everyone I was involved with. And I also, at the same time, was neglecting myself, my health, and my mind, my education. Um, I realized at that moment that all it would take for me would be one severe illness, one slip like that to cause me to plunge me into financial crisis and possibly devastation. There would be no way for me to catch up because every paycheck I get was marked for something. I had a little savings, but typically when I paid my bills, and I don't live extravagantly, I've not had cable for years, but when I paid my water and my insurance and things like that, internet, um, I would live on about $160 that was left over for 2 weeks. And I think that that is the reality for a lot of people. So at that point, it really started to hit home to me that I was just one illness, perhaps away from catastrophe and maybe even homelessness. Um, anyway, I wanted to start this journey from what I call 9 to 5 to freedom. And I wanted to sort of document that because a lot of people out there, I think, are in the same boat as myself. Who wants to work, at least at my age, until I don't, 69 is what the government says now for retirement. I don't know, with the way I treated my body earlier on in my life, that I'll still be around at 69 or that my hips will be around at 69. So what I started doing is developing a plan. First of all, I wanted to ask myself why. Why did I want to do this? And really, for me, it came down to more freedom. The things that I was purchasing to supplement this life. For example, because of my job, I travel 3,000 miles a month for work. And my car wore out really quickly. So I went out and I tried to find something 2 years old with a warranty. I ended up buying a new car because of incentives, and I regretted it from the very day. However, I was able to continue with my job. But these are the things I'm talking about. I had to buy suitable clothing to wear to work. I had to, these are just parts of everyone's life and everyone's struggle. But those are the reasons why, because I felt like I was getting myself further into debt just by living a normal life, just by living the regular life. And I'm not talking about extravagant stuff. I didn't go out on shopping sprees or anything like that. Most items I have, I hate to say this, I've picked up and repurposed on the side of the road or have been given to me as gifts or yard sales, flea markets. I really like to find and repurpose old items. That goes back to the sustainability aspect. I don't want things to go to the landfill. If I can find a purpose or repurpose them, I think it's all part of our duty. But anyway, so the second question after why, after I knew why, I wanted to know when, like what was my time frame. And for my time frame, and it's different for everyone, but I wanted to be at a place financially by the time my daughter graduated high school that I could leave, that I could either sell my home and use that money to put in the bank and just live off interest, but more likely rent my home out and find some other alternate means of supporting myself that didn't include a 40-hour-a-week commitment, and live simply and live just simply, grow as much of my own food as possible. So around that time also, I started a garden and I started learning about natural ways to grow and about permaculture and supplementing your own soil and compost. And so these are all skills that we had to pick up. So that sort of goes along with how am I going to get there? So that's the next question. So for me, my goal was now it's just 4 years away. My daughter is a freshman. By the time she goes into college, I would like to be out from under as much debt as possible, to have a plan as far as whether it includes purchasing a piece of land that has no building restrictions or codes that I could live off grid on it, or perhaps I've thrown around the idea a little bit of living in a converted bus or a camper of some type. So the skills that you need, there's a very long list, and I plan on making a video talking about the skills, and I'm talking literally hundreds of things that our grandparents knew or just intuited that we have been so long removed from now that we have no concept of it. So learning those skills, becoming familiar with those things, like being able to grow and being able to look at a plant and know what it needs based on the colors of the leaves, or to know how to rid it of a certain pest or parasite without chemical means, because our grandparents didn't have that available to them, yet they grew food that was healthy and nutritious and not genetically modified. So the skills. Also, it's really important when you go through this to believe it. You have to have the mindset that you're committing to this goal long term. And the difference is, if you write it down on paper and you go through the motions, you're still doing things like buying that extra pair of shoes, or maybe not paying more on your credit card so you can go to a movie, or things like that. That's the difference between being in the mindset and committed as to not, because now my purchases are very basic: food, fuel, insurance, house payment, and everything else that I purchase outside of putting money away. Everything else I purchase is aimed at getting off grid. I've recently, well, not recently, but over the last couple of years, I've purchased things like Life Straws, if you're familiar with them. I'll go over that at a later time, but some really good two-way radios with very high range. Faraday bags for EMP attacks, if you're not familiar with that. And I'm not saying there will be an EMP attack. like contingency plans, and you'll find that out about me. So, actually committing, and stop buying little frivolous things and gas station sodas and all the other things that you do. It will soon become really important to you to pare down your life and to realize what it is that you actually need. What do you need? Do you need that set of little votive candles setting on your nightstand? I don't. I don't need it. And quite frankly, when it comes down to the point of my daughter graduating and me getting out of here, it's going to be a hindrance. So really changing your mindset is important. So next, you also want to visualize where you want to be. For each of us, that's going to be different. For me, I don't even have an exact plan yet. I think I would like to be somewhere, maybe in the Ozarks, or somewhere in a mountainous area that is still relatively touristy, but yet you can have unrestricted land and you have low taxes, and there are no rules and regulations against collecting rainwater or solar. So research that for yourself very carefully. Also, deciding if you want to be mobile or at a place, a stationary place. I'm leaning more towards having a secondary place that I can purchase in the very near future, where I could go down on weekends or on vacations and plant fruit trees and clear an area for a garden. If there's a pond, then clear it and stock it and get things going that way, so that in 4 years, when I'm ready to make that move, things are ready. Also, if you're able to visualize it, it will help you to make the list that you need to make. So it's nice to say, this is what I want on the end of that. This is what I would like to have at the end. You do have to have that list. I'm not saying don't make that list, but I'm also saying in short increments, you also have to have a plan to pay down your debt so that you can actually do this, so people aren't pursuing you. Or maybe you don't want to pay off your debt. Maybe you just want to declare bankruptcy when you're ready to go. I'm not judging. That decision is up to you and your family. But short-term goals still have to be made and met. So, for example, I need to make what I consider, I need to collect the essentials. For camping, if I'm going to be buying a piece of land and just going there with a camper, I need to have things to stay warm, to stay cool, to purify our own water if we're really that off-grid. If I don't find a place with a well, I'm going to have some purification devices anyway. So also educating myself on those things along the way is important. Educating yourself with local property regulations and building restrictions and codes. So these things seem insurmountable, but when you break them down into really manageable little blocks, you are able to do them. And so hopefully I can share my journey along the way with you. Maybe you have tips and tricks that you can share with me and with other people out there. And I really think I need to do this. I need to get there. One of the things that I realized in this journey is that I've worked since I've been 15 years old. 15. I lied to get my first job. Well, before that, into tasseling, but my first real job. I lied, and then I lost it when I turned 16 because they found out. But I had 2 jobs then, so it didn't matter. I realized that my grandparents were able to have one of them at home to care for us because my parents could not have a parent at home. And my parents are relatively close in age to me. They're only 17 and 18 years older than me. And I'm 46 now in 2018. So they were watching us. They were our main caregivers. And we were lucky. We were lucky to have that. Many people don't have that, and they fall through the cracks. I'm not saying my life was peachy in any way, shape, or form, and you'll find those things out later, because I've hit a road bump along the way. But realizing that me or my child will likely never be able to retire. I'm the first person in my immediate family to graduate high school. I was the first person in all of my family to graduate college. And just in this journey, realizing that I had something to offer that that corporate America out there would use, what changed my entire brain. I just didn't realize that I had that capability because of where I came from. And so many people don't. But now once I'm here and living this life like all of those people who I admired as a child and went to their house and they had nice cars and nice things and they did vacations and all of this other thing, but they had struggle with money and credit card debt and people declared bankruptcy and lost their businesses. I mean, is this really the American dream? Is this what we want? It's not what I want. I want a simple life where I do not have to bust my ass, I said ass, every day for somebody else to make money off of me. For the last 3 years at my job, I've been doing two people's work and was promised that a position would be created to split my job. Here we go. So this is the hard part of the video for me. In July of 2017, I was very stressed out. Like I said, I've been covering three people's jobs. What that boils down to is I was a patient advocate and financial insurance coordinator for almost 1,200 patients for 3 years. They did create the position. We had a staff meeting in July, and I found out that the group of people in Northern Illinois who didn't quite have that load, who had like 800 or 900 people. So that was like 50% more than we should cover. The recommendation was 500 people. So they were underperforming compared to me. And so they moved that position to assist them. And so here I was in this position going home that evening and thinking about all of this. I have performed 110% over the last 6.5 years for this company. And for the last 3, I was promised something that was just ripped out from under me. And I thought I could handle it. And I thought, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel. They say they're going to put in for another position. But we're looking at 3 more years perhaps down the road with the way corporate America works. So I went home that evening and I gave myself a pep talk and did all the gratitude stuff and jumping ahead a little. Got up the next morning. I remember getting up. I remember getting my daughter ready and don't remember dropping her off at school. Would have dropped her around 7:15 a.m. And started my day as usual. Went either to a remote clinic to work and visit new patients or to go to my office. On this particular day, I went to my office apparently. And around 9:30, someone came and knocked on my door. And I realized I was sitting at my desk with my keys in my hand and I had not logged in my computer and had absolutely no recollection of what I had done or where I had been. Immediately, I called the school to make sure my daughter had arrived safely, and she had, and they were alarmed that I didn't remember dropping her off. And I said, I've just had a rough day. So I called my employer's employee assistance program. And I got set up with a therapist, and they advised me to call my boss and have a conversation with her. And she set me up a meeting with her in 3 days after the weekend. So in the meantime, I went to the meeting with the therapist, and they recommended that I go out on a short-term leave. And they believe this was related to PTSD, and I'll get into that in a later video. But basically, so here I was now at this crossroads where the one illness or the one thing could derail my life. So for the past 2 years, almost 3, I had been paying my bills down as much as I could, socking away as much at them as I could. Student loan included, paying extra, paying 20% extra on my house, with the goal of getting it paid down as much as possible by the time that my daughter was ready to graduate. So here I was, no paycheck, couldn't go back to work. They wouldn't let me come back to work. They wanted me to get assistance. And so that's what I did. I just started out trusting in the system. I had paid into short-term disability, so luckily I did have a little bit of a paycheck coming in, but it was nothing compared to what we were used to. And so we went from being able to pay some bills off to surviving and barely surviving. Getting a little bit further and further behind every month. Started out being able to pay my house payment on the 25th, 5 days before it was due. Then it was the 10th. And then it got around the 25th of the month. And anyway, you get the picture. So my life was suddenly derailed, and what I was working for seemed to be put on hold. But in this, I also found time. I found some time to examine what I wanted a little bit further, to think about where I wanted to be, and what things were absolutely essential for me to get there. So paring down a lot of things that I didn't need out of the picture. So it's becoming even more and more basic. So basically, this is what the channel is about. I hope that you will share this with other like-minded people who are interested in making that transition from 9 to 5 everyday rat race to off-grid, sustainable, simple living. And some of you might take issue with that term, and I'm not a supporter of Agenda 21 or anything like that. But these are the terms that resonate with me. And so also, I will be covering my weight loss journey, and I'll have a special section for that. I've lost 150 pounds so far. Here is a photo. And I'll share other photos, even though they're very painful for me to share, to look at myself in that way. I mean, I'm not thin. I'm not thin yet. I want to lose 50 to 60 more pounds, but I'm getting there. And additionally, I want to become an advocate for talking about mental health. It's very taboo. People sometimes don't get the help they need because they're just afraid to ask. I want to maybe let's not go that far. I want to show you that a normal everyday person can have bouts of time where they need to rediscover themselves, and they need to maybe figure out how their own brain works and why you've been conditioned that way in your life, and to deal with those base issues. So I'm going through that with PTSD and dissociative disorder. And so I'll have a group of videos specifically about mental health and those issues as well. So my name is Erin, and I hope you will join me along the way in my journey. And like, comment, subscribe. I will try to get to comments as they become available. Of course, there will be negative ones. I will do my best. I will do my best. So thank you for watching. Good luck.